Hey kid, you got it right. This is Yada's vlog on a blog. Catch it with us now.
There it is.
Oh, I do love the new introduction. That is that is priceless. Okay, so we put the Wookiee to work, and Wookiee is now introducing the one and only vlog on a blog. We're now in our fourth iteration of it, are we not?
This
Yep,
is
we're
4.
just
Yes,
tracking
it
them
is.
by date.
Yeah, I think this is pretty spectacular. What we're doing here is we're combining the worst of two bad worlds, if you will.
Right.
Today blogging has become such an exercise of treading muck and a cesspool. Between particularly with X, but throughout the various platforms, social media platforms, there's just so much rubbish out there. But occasionally you run across an interesting post and you can comment on it, and occasionally a few people might even see your comment on an interesting post. But what we have found, most people just don't read anymore. I mean, this post here from the New York Post, which of course is posting on Facebook, has like 15 words. So it's way beyond the readership of most people. But nevertheless, what we've decided to do is, since the vlogging is popular, and I have noticed that you don't have to have much of an IQ to participate in blogging, or to be a vlogger, or to listen to vlogging. It is very popular. So we're going to do our continuation of the vlog on a blog and speak to blog posts. I actually think it's here I've been poo-pooing it, but I actually think it's an interesting format. I enjoy this format because what you can do is bring up a news item and you can talk about it. And I think it's a much more interesting way to go about this. Many years ago, I had a syndicated radio program called Shattering Myths, and I would do this in Radio Land, where I would clip news stories. I used to read 15, 20 newspapers a day, and I would clip the interesting news stories, and I would read a line or two from the story, and then tell listeners what the truth was behind these events that they were reading. And so that's what we're going to try to do here. The first post that you have up, of course, from the New York Post, is that Hamas hid tons of baby formula to damage Israel with starvation claims. Palestinian activist claims. Well,
surprise.
Well, first of all, first of all, it was not tons. I've seen the pictures. I've seen even videos of the whole surrounding, and it looks like there's a couple of pallets that may have fallen off a truck, and then they were subsequently buried. But the fact is that the Muslims in Gaza are not that industrious. So the idea of them taking tons of baby formula and hiding it, they would much prefer to put it in and have somebody else put it in a guarded warehouse and let it rot there than they would go through all of that industry to bury it. That's, I say, Muslims don't do that kind of work, and so it's being repeated that it's tons of baby formula when it's probably a few pallets that fell off a truck. But that's not the story that I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is goes right back to the core of all of this. And it's something that I had come to the conclusion regarding, and then had it verified by Sinwar himself. Sinwar, yeah, Sinwar is, you're correct. Sinwar actually wrote a letter to his operatives on the day of October 7th. And what he told them to do had nothing to do with the idea of being the invaders. They weren't trying to claim land. They weren't trying to conquer Israel. They weren't trying to defeat a military. They had no military objective. The entire objective was to be savage, was to rape, to plunder, to torture, to abduct. and to do those things so brutally and so savagely that Israel would be goaded into the response that we have witnessed, which is the obliteration of Gaza. That was the intent of Alaska Flood. It's not something that many people, in fact, I may be the only person that recognizes this, that the intent of Alaska Flood was singular. And that was to bait Israel to play Israel, such that Israel's response would be to destroy Gaza. And so this idea of blaming Israel for starving Gazans and for obliterating Gaza as a war crime and as genocide, that was the purpose. And Israel took the bait. And you might say, well, how is that even possible? Well, of course that's possible, because there is no way that the Gazan Muslims, even combined with the West Bank Muslims, let's call them by the term they would like to use, it's actually Judea and Samaria, but the Muslims inside and surrounding Israel have demonstrated to themselves in failed wars that they cannot conquer Israel. So there is no way they're going to conquer Israel in a traditional battle. So all they can do is weaken Israel such that Israel becomes indefensible. And then they've come up with a strategy that they will deploy again because it worked. And that was the strategy of Alaska Flood. What you do is, it doesn't matter that you're outgunned with airplanes and with helicopters and with tanks and with personnel, armored personnel carriers and this sort of thing. They sent in 4,000 jihadists, most of whom were not even Hamas, most of whom walked in tennis shoes and blue jeans and were very lightly armed. And they sent them in to be Muslims, to do as Allah does throughout the Quran, to be torturous. Because what they realized is that by abducting Jews, by killing Jews, by raping Jews, that they would cause Israel to respond this way. And when Israel destroyed Gaza, it isolated Israel from the world. Israel was already playing a losing hand in terms of public relations. It already had the United Nations, which exists now solely to demonize Jews. And so we already had this rise of anti-Semitism that was taking place around the world. This lit the fire. The images of seeing Gaza destroyed and the fact that Israel has all these fancy warplanes and bombs and tanks and the Gazans have essentially nothing caused the world to say that Israel was a brute, and therefore Israel should be isolated. And what it ultimately is going to cause is a Fakistanian Islamic State to be carved out of Israel, which will make Israel indefensible. The prophet spoke about it. They said it was going to happen over the next 6 months, as a matter of fact. And so this is what Israel did. They were baited into destroying their reputation in the world by destroying Gaza. And at the time that October 7th occurred, back in over 2 years ago, I remember watching it as I was translating Zephaniah's prophecies regarding Gaza. And I knew exactly what Israel was going to do. I mean, just watching the fact that Israel was so unprepared that it took the IDF a day to respond, it was obvious that what Israel was going to do, the IDF was going to make up for its complete and utter failure by pounding Gaza. They were going to invade Gaza. And I said that the moment they do that and they think they can win a religious war with bullets and bombs, they will destroy Israel, because you cannot win a religious war with bullets and bombs. You make more of them than you kill. And at this point, there are just as many Islamic terrorists, gun-toting Islamic terrorists in Gaza as there were before. And that is not going to change. You cannot remove the Islam from Gaza. And therefore, you cannot disarm or remove Hamas, which is the most Islamic organization in Gaza. It's impossible. And they've been doing it now for 2 years. And like an insane child, they're continuing to say, we're going to do it. That's what we're going to do in this next phase. We're going to disarm Hamas. No, you're not.
Now. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been doing it for 2 years, and all you've done is make a bad situation worse. You destroyed Gaza, turned the world against you, and now it's your responsibility to feed people who want to kill you. And there is no solution to this. And so Israel has destroyed its reputation around the world. It's isolated itself from around the world, and it's put itself in an impossible position, and it was outthunk by Muslims. And the Muslims in Gaza have average IQs of about 60. And they out-strategized the Jews. They played the Jews for fools. It's unconscionable. And I recall that morning saying, this is what you're going to do. This will fail. This will be the result of what you were going to do. And I gave Israel a 5-point plan and said, if you do this instead, you'll prevail. They didn't do any one of those things. And they did the very thing that I foretold would cause them to be in this predicament, and they're there now. And it got so bad that Israel now is a vassal of Donald J. Trump, and he is the most disgusting human being on the planet and the least reliable. What a terrible position to put themselves in, but that's what they did. So they can protest all they want that Hamas hid baby formula, and okay, no one's going to care. That ship has long sailed. Israel lost the war of public opinion, and they destroyed themselves when they bombed Gaza into oblivion, and they continue to pursue unwinnable war goals. Oh, God, I want to barf. I mean, just look at this.
You don't like donuts?
Oh, well, no, I don't actually like jelly donuts, no. You can have the jelly donuts. The thing that's disgusting to me, they got their Messiah flag there. They have no idea who the Messiah is. He's the central figure in the entire story that Yahweh tells. From the Torah all the way through the end of the prophets, the single most important figure is the Messiah, and they don't even know who the hell he is. The message was delivered in Hebrew to them in person by their own people, and they can't read it and figure out who the damn Messiah is. Not damn Messiah, he's a hell of a good guy. I like him, my buddy. But their Messiah is insane as their Hashem God. They're talking about, may Hashem bless you. No, there is no Hashem. God's name is Yahweh. You should be able to read it. He included his name almost 7,000 times in his Torah, prophets, and Psalms. And the Messiah is Dod. He is your former and returning king. He is the Messiah. He's also the Son of God. And a menorah, maybe you can't count, but it has 7 candles. Everything that Yahweh does is 6 plus 1. It has 7 candles. This piece of crap has 9 because you've turned a religious civil war into your culture's folklore. All you had here was 2 rival sides vying for who's going to control the priesthood. And you woven a Greek defiance into the story, and yet you even call your houses of worship now synagogues after the goddamn Greeks.
Right.
So you're absolutely insane in all of this. The whole thing was a fairy tale. The menorah has 7 candles. To put 9 on it is an insult to God. To change God's name from Yahweh to Hashem is an insult to God. And to fly a flag that you're expecting a Messiah to come back and you don't even know his name and you don't know when he's going to come back, and you've got a goy that's telling you his name is Dod. He is your former king. He's the guy that Yahweh said 3 times to anoint his Messiah. And he knows the exact minute of the exact day that he's going to return, and you're clueless. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, Nachri figured it out, right?
Right. Then Nachri figured it out, and they can't. By the way, it's 6:22 p.m. as the sun sets in Jerusalem on the 2nd of October, 2033. Is the moment that Dod is returning as the king of forever. And he's returning with this fellow named Yahweh, who just so happens to be God. And at that moment, every religious Jew, every religious Christian and Muslim, every Marxist, every anti-Semite, every conspiratorialist on the planet will be gone. So you may want to drop the religious crap before that time if you want to survive this next 8 years. Or you can play with your dreidel and eat your jelly donut.
I say the dreidel's a little benign, isn't it? I mean, do we have anything on the dreidel?
Yeah. A children's gambling game. I don't know. Dreidel. Right. It's all tied in with Hanukkah. So well, how would it be any different than, putting an ornament on a Christmas tree? I don't know. Goodness. Oh yeah. This is quite the picture. You don't very often see the horror of what the two witnesses face when they come to Jerusalem on April 18th, I believe, is the day. It is the 14th of Abib in year in 2030 is when they arrive. And if you look at this picture, you see that hideous boil called the Dome of the Rock, which is a Islamic trophy saying, "Ha ha ha, our God is better than your God. We put our trophy right on top of the temple of your God." It's nothing but a trophy, and it's a trophy to utter stupidity, because it's Muhammad that claimed that he flew from a bed where at the time he was 66 and he was in bed with a 6-year-old girl, and he had just gone through the embarrassment of the satanic verses, and so he was looking for an excuse to get out of town because he was a laughingstock. 12 years of preaching, he had like 3 followers, and his primary follower was the man whose daughter he was molesting. And so this stalwart of an individual imagined that night that he rode on a winged ass. It would have been quite a sight to see an ass on an ass, but nonetheless, that's what he claimed, a winged ass, al-Barak. And he leapt from Kaabaville, which, by the way, was not Mecca, it was Petra. Right. It leapt from Kaabaville, due north, to the Temple Mount, where he claims he met inside the temple with the big shots of Jewish history. Now, he didn't know, because he wasn't very smart, that the city was named Jerusalem, but he didn't know that. He didn't know that the temple had been destroyed because he wasn't there, and he was really a stupid, illiterate idiot. And so he didn't know the temple had been destroyed 600 years prior to all of this. And he didn't know that everybody that he said that he met with, from Adam and Moshe and Dode, Solomon, the Noah, the like, didn't know that they had been dead for anywhere from hundreds of years to thousands of years. But he wasn't very bright, as I said. And when he finally got here, that's why that dome is there, is to commemorate where the winged ass, when it arrived in Jerusalem, that is where the hoofy print is. So it's the dome of the hoofy print, where the hoofy print is, where the winged ass left up to go visit Allah, which means that you couldn't get to Allah, obviously, from the Kaaba. You had to come to Jerusalem and the Temple Mount to get to Allah, which is a little glitch in their problem, but I guess if you're flying winged asses, who cares about it? Right. Don't sweat the small stuff, right? And on the way to Allah, guess where the Barak and Muhammad had to travel? Hell.
Oh, they go through hell, right? Yeah.
Go through hell. You have to go through hell to get to Allah. Well, it makes sense, because every depiction of Allah in the Quran, he is in hell torturing people. Might make him Satan if you were sane, but what the hell? Don't sweat the details. So he gets into to heaven, and he finds that there's 2 things in heaven. One is there's hell. There's this really hot looking babe, and he just lusts all over for this hot looking babe. And the hot looking babe happens to be his adopted son's wife. And he says, something's going to happen, man. I'm gonna get you. You're going to be mine. That would be incest in most people's books, but again, we don't apply the details to Muhammad's life. You'd go crazy if you did. So anyway, everybody else there was hanging from their breast by meat hooks, being tortured. Oh yeah, being tortured. Evidently, hell in Islam is a physical realm. It's not a place where souls go. It's a place where physical bodies go, and then they're being tortured. And they weren't being tortured because they weren't Muslims. They weren't being tortured because they hadn't capitulated to Allah. No, they were being tortured because they weren't grateful to the men in their lives. What the meaning is, if you're a woman, you either capitulate to the demeaning treatment that you're receiving from men, or you're going to be hung by your breast forever in hell. A lovely religion.
No upside.
No upside. That's why that dome exists. It needs to be destroyed. If Israel had any character, it would destroy that dome. Now, the building that's right above the green light, the green light is where they're doing the archaeological digs and taking us back to 7th, 8th, 9th century BCE into what Jerusalem was back then. But to the right of that, there's a continuation of the wall, and this, by the way, it's all the wall of Herod. So this Herod was a disgusting pro-Roman dictator, and so to be praying to stones that were laid at the direction of Herod is reprehensible by itself, and you can see all the Jews lined up there, and that mass to venerate a wall that was created by a man that oppressed God's people, collaborating with the Romans. But above that, you can see there is the mosque, and you see the minaret, the prayer tower of it. That's Al-Aqsa Mosque. The last attack on Israel that was so brutal was called Al-Aqsa Flood. If Israel had any confidence, any character, any courage, the morning after Al-Aqsa Flood, I would have at least made the offer to the Muslims in Gaza, saying, you can return all of the hostages, and everyone who took them can surrender. And I may not take down Al-Aqsa Mosque. I may not. I might, but I may not. But if you don't, I will. And I would have. I would have absolutely destroyed Al-Aqsa Mosque. I would have razed the Dome of the Rock. And I would have prevented Muslims from ever stepping foot on the Temple Mount again. Yeah, and I wouldn't have given a hoot what the world said about it. And then, I would have fought the war very differently. I would have given every resident of Israel a copy of Goddamn Religion. It's 5 volumes. Here's volume 3 of 5. It's 4,250 pages. It is the single best weapon that could possibly be wielded against Islam. It is irrefutable. It destroys the credibility of the religion. It made it easy for them to prevail. And that is the weapon I would have fired is intelligence. It's words wielded wisely. Yeah. But anyway, those two, actually there's 3 blights there. The blight of Jews worshiping the stones that were laid by Herod, a man who was horrid towards them. The dome of the Houthi print, that gold top boil that needs to be lanced, and then Al-Aqsa Mosque in the corner. The other thing that's just interesting when I see a picture like this is that, where does God expect Elia and myself to be positioned as we arrive there as the 2 witnesses? So it is an interesting thing. If you're speaking to Israel, the best position would be above Hadrian's wall, not Hadrian's, but the Herod's wall there, the Western Wall. That would be the most prominent position that you could be in. So it's been interesting to see. I do know that God is going to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock and all other religious trappings on the Temple Mount. It'll be completely scourged of all of those religious artifacts and trophies. And then he is going to establish the tent of the restoring witness is going to be put where it belongs. Right. So I do know that is how it's going to be dressed at the time of our arrival. I've told, yeah, I have no problem doing what he wants me to do, but I am allergic to religious shrines, so that's going to have to go. And I said, no problem. God's really easy to negotiate with when you ask for things that he wants to do.
That he wants, right?
Yeah, it really works out
Yes.
nicely. I've never found one time where God didn't say, sure, I'm happy to accommodate that. You just ask for things that you know that he wants. But anyway, it's an interesting perspective as to where we're going to be. And I've always thought that the most likely spot was right there in the middle of what's called that Western Wailing Wall, right above it, looking down on the crowds that are going to be so belligerent.
Yeah,
So-
I don't see there's any way that the tent is erected there with the mosque and the boil, there.
No.
There's absolutely
No.
no way.
No,
So
none. God, and above the two witnesses, God's going to have the scroll that's the Nesh. It's going to be a giant scroll that is suspended in the air above them. That's going to be programs like this, and it's also going to be excerpts from Yada and the Torah and the prophets are all going to be there. He is going to raise the Ark of the Covenant for all to see. The 10 statements in stone are going to be held up for the world to see. He's not going to expose that stuff to all of that religious crap. So it's going to go away. And the sacrifice of the Anima Parah takes place in front of the tent of the restoring witness. God's not going to establish the final home for his name and for the covenant family until Dowd has the opportunity to do that. That won't be until Yom Kippurim, October 2nd, 2033. So it's going to be a tent of the restoring witness. The Ark of the Covenant will be stored there as well. That's where I think we'll camp out during this time. And it will be
3 years of
close
living in
to
a tent.
Yeah, it's going to be very close to where the Dome of the Rock is. And then there will be the altar where the Anima Parah is sacrificed that will be on the west side of it, overlooking the Mount of Olives. So that's the various layout. One of the things I don't quite know, and it's just an interesting thought as we look at this picture, is that the Elia will have already been in Shamayim, his soul, with Yahweh for 2,888 years. I'm not certain that Elia is going to have his soul put into a temporary body for that 3.5 years, and that we're going to find that Elia is wholly an earthbound man at that point. And you and I will have been up in Shamayim for 3.5 years at that point.
Right.
And when you're taken from this world and your physical body is gone and you're enveloped with light and energy, and you're elevated all the way into 7 dimensions, to then take your soul, which is liberated in all of this, empowered and enriched by all of this, and put it back into a physical body temporarily to form a purpose. Well, I can see that to an extent. I'm still convinced that we at the level that Yah was taking us, there'll be way too much of us to have all of us put into a physical body again. And so I'm thinking that our primary consciousness, our soul, the majority of who we are will stay in Shamayim, and it'll be a projection of our soul's consciousness that will be projected through those in those bodies. It's why one of the reasons they'll be so impervious, no matter what people shoot at them or throw at them or say to them or do to them. You could nuke them and they would just, why'd you bother? So yeah, it's interesting to see how all that will play out. And I happen to be a fan of the projected Nefesh, because the role is on the far side in the darkness there of where the shadow of the dome of the hoofy print is. That's where the altar will be for the sacrifice of the Anima Parah. And since that is something I get to endure, my preference would be that it's not all of me that is there. But, we'll see how God plays it out. I tell you one thing, at this point, I ain't going to argue with him. He's going to say, you're going to do it this way. I said, Yes, sir.
Let's go.
Let's go. Put me in, coach.
Right.
We've come this far. We're going to finish the job for darn sure. We're going to finish the
Right.
job. So anyway, it's just all interesting to think about. But that is going to be major terraformed, what you're looking at there. And ultimately, God during the fulfillment of Yom Teruah, He's going to release torrents of water from underneath the Temple Mount. There's going to be a fire the flames are going to reach up into the heavens. The ash from the body of the Adam of Parah is going to mix with the water and the searing flames, and it's going to purge the mortal remnant of Israel. The mortal remnant is going to be all around the Temple Mount, recognizing that all the religious stuff at that point will be purged and gone away. So you'll have much more access to it. It'll hold a much larger contingent of people. But it's going to be an interesting sight. The greatest viewpoint will be on the slopes overlooking this from the east side on the Mount of Olives. So the opposite vantage point that is here. This is a southwest vantage point with a drone, and a due east vantage point will be the most interesting. That's why both Yahweh and Dode, when they return, are going to return from the proximity of the Mount of Olives, because that gives you a frontal view of all of this. There's people that do the explosion of the Alaska Mosque and the Dome of the Hufi print, which are going to be destroyed, and then the reestablishment of their temples. And they have the temple being of stone again, and it's not going to be of stone this time. It's going to be of light. And they have it with the opening facing the south, but it doesn't face the south. It faces the east. Yeah. And so they always have their angles wrong. But what are you going to expect for people? Details, right? Details matter to me.
AI, you're right.
Yeah. AI is not necessarily very smart.
I'll just be happy not to be hungry. When we come back, that's 3 years living in a tent. I'll be happy just not to be hungry and not to be cold, and then anything else I can take. So as long as we're not hungry and cold, it's like, a little ache and pain here and there, I'll be okay with. But
but I do think we're going to be living in that tent for a while. But we'll see how the accommodations work out.
Put us up in the King David Hotel.
I don't know. I don't think so. Personally, no, I don't. I don't think so. Well, we'll see what Yahweh has in mind. But anyway, that is the scene. Yeah, that we're not going to play this, obviously, but Return to the Garden, this is the 4th episode. I walked away from that program last night, realizing that what we were presenting in this series is food for the soul. It is so far in advance of what anyone has perceived in 2.5 millennia. This is how deep that was, where the realization is that Gan Eden represents the earth. Mm-hmm. And Gan Eden was a brief experiment to foreshadow what was going to happen 8 years from now, when the entire earth becomes Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, and where a very limited number of people are going to be allowed in. And there's a whole process by which those people will be chosen and then prepared once they're in. And one of the things that we have discovered is that it's God who caused the fall of man. He terminated the experiment in the Gan Eden. And he did so because Adam didn't pass muster. And if you want to be invited back to the Gan Eden, and you want to pass muster with God, be interesting to God, then there's certain things that you need to do that Adam did not do. And I think that whole perspective is extremely enlightening and enriching. And the bottom line is that God wants a coworker. The people, everyone that God chose to engage with was considered a coworker. God is active. And as one who is active, he wants to have collaborators. He wants people that are willing to engage and to make things better. It's like being in a marriage where one person just sits around all day and say, feed me, bathe me, pet me, scratch me,
Right.
that sort of thing. They don't contribute anything. It's a waste. It's negative. It's
not fulfilling.
Worse than
it's
not
a team. Yeah.
Right. It's worse than not having the relationship at all. And that's what Adam was. Adam didn't contribute anything. And we're told that that was his primary purpose. The second was that God wants to go off and explore the universe, but he can't do that with someone he cannot trust and who is not observant. So if you're going to go off to explore the universe, you need somebody that's observant. That was the second thing that God said. So I want somebody that's going to contribute to the relationship work. And number two, I want somebody who's Shamar, who is observant, because we're going to be explorers. We're going to go off and explore this universe. We're going to have a great time checking things out. And then he wanted somebody who would not just only listen, but would respond appropriately so that he could trust them. And we humans have done a really crappy job at that, particularly Jews. They're not listening to Yahweh. Even when God says, listen, Yisrael, Yahweh, your God is one. Rather than listening, they turned it into a prayer so they could yabber at him. I mean,
Right.
and then they erased his name and made it Adonai. I mean, it couldn't be any more ignorant of what God is asking us to do than our religious Jews. So this is a really interesting series. It also equates not only Eden with earth as a protective enclosure conducive to life, but it equates Gan Eden, Gan, with Sukkah, with verbal roots being identical in what they describe, such that what Sukkah represents, the reason it's considered camping out, shelters, is that we're being invited back to the garden, and the doors to the garden will be opened on the 7th of October, 2033, and the terraforming of the earth will begin on Teruah 15 days prior to that. So that is an amazing series that I'm honored to even be part of.
Yeah, it does comprehensively. It really shows the Ruach of Etzah and the Ruach of Da'ath, the actual bringing the comprehensive picture together beautifully with the greater and lesser luminaries, all of these things that are taking place that people throughout time they've been day one, day two, day three, individual pieces. You're the one that's finally tying them all together. It says, no, they're all talking about the same thing.
They are. And one of the things that's so interesting, I think, Kevin, is that the garden the focus of the garden wasn't actually the tree of lives, the Etz Shamim, and I'm delighted to be the first person to identify the tree of lives. It's Dode David. He is also the greater luminary in the previous chapter of Genesis. And he earned that distinction because he fulfilled Passover, opening the doorway to life. And I think that is exceedingly profound by itself. That would be a contribution for a lifetime. But the story in the garden doesn't focus on the tree of lives. It focuses on the tree of knowledge. And the tree of knowledge is the first tree discussed in terms of God laying out what's going to happen here, actually described. And it's the tree that they ate from and that yielded the consequences because they prematurely tried to avail themselves of something that wasn't for their time. But the tree of knowledge happens to be the Etz Da'ath, happens to be the lesser luminary of Genesis 1 that reflects the greater luminaries, the tree of lives, brilliance. And more importantly, the most interesting of all prophecies in terms of a last day prophecy is that of the Choder. There's nobody that has an entire chapter devoted to him, plus an entire proverb, than the Choder. The Choder is the first person in human history to be given the seven spirits of Yahweh. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to deal with it. They want to pretend like it's a messianic prophecy. Well, the Messiah is the tree of lives, so the Choder most certainly isn't a messianic prophecy. And the fact of the matter is, it says right in the midst of it that he is the Etz Da'ath. He's the tree of knowledge. And that's why he has roots. That's why Choder means stem. That's why he's called an observant branch. That is why that he is described in that presentation by Yahweh himself as being parah, fruitful. So this is the tree of knowledge offering access to the tree of lives. That is that story. It's among the most profoundly important things we have ever done. We will likely do a 5th installment later today or tomorrow morning on the returning to the garden. And really, it's brilliant. It is the fruit of the tree of knowledge that is being offered in that series.
Absolutely.
Voyager I got a kick out of. Yeah, I got a kick out of this. What the headline is that the path of Voyager 1 was so precisely planned by NASA that they went 37 years without making a single trajectory correction. Now, why do you think that I found that just delightful, humorous, delicious?
Because
they had to rely on good old-fashioned math and not.
They did. Voyager 1 was launched in 77, which means that it was planned beginning in the late 60s, early 70s, which means that the engineers that designed that trajectory, there weren't even calculators back then. Calculator began right about 5-6 years before it was launched, but the trajectory, the planning of this was conducted on slide rules. Yeah. And there was no AI, there was no internet, there were no smartphones. The idea of a personal computer had not been invented yet. These guys didn't have computer terminals at their desks. The amount of computing knowledge that went, or power that went into these things, is about the same as you'd have in a toaster oven today.
Right.
And so this was done up here. Human intelligence. And human intelligence is a pretty amazing thing. 37 years to plot the path of Voyager without a trajectory correction. And now they apply supercomputers and don't do any better. We have so overhyped artificial intelligence and so constrained and trashed human intelligence. It's just a shame what we've done to ourselves and how much brighter we once were. I recall it was a time where I was studying Thomas Jefferson, because Thomas Jefferson was actually the first to realize that Paul, the author of the Christian New Testament, was a complete fraud. And I was just interested as to how he came to that conclusion before he had all the tools that I had to work with. And I particularly enjoyed Jefferson's juxtaposition of heart and head as he was trying to decide, should he return to his great love in France and or should he do what his head demanded and stayed the course and try to bring this new nation into fruition. And the letters that he wrote on head and heart, and the letters that he wrote on his thinking that the Christian New Testament was an absolute piece of trash, and how he warned the person that he had all but adopted as a son, don't share this with anybody, because if anybody recognizes that I have deduced that Paul was a charlatan, they'd have my head. But he did, and he also wrote vociferously on the fatal nature of a nation having a standing military. He was, for him to have a shrine on that has military honors, he would have puked. He hated the idea of an established military. That's why the Second Amendment exists, is that with a unarmed militia, you don't need a standing army. Your country becomes inoccupiable. And he was also against a central bank. He was also against religion having any say in politics, and everything that he wanted, of course, was overlooked. And so he is not the founding father of the nation that we became. And so, the reason I was saying this is that the intelligence being decayed is that if you read what Jefferson wrote, or any scholar of that day, for them a sentence is like a paragraph for us.
Right.
And a paragraph is like pages. And that is my favorite way to write. And I realized that even my editors couldn't follow what I was saying. And so I occasionally I'll throw in one long sentence just because I can. But for the most part, you have to dumb it down today. You have to have short sentences, 2 or 3 sentences per paragraph, many paragraphs per page. And if you don't do it that way, our minds have become so flabby, we can't process the information anymore. Now we're doing a vlog on a vlog because if people have to read more than 10 words, you lose them.
Right. Yeah, they're not going to. Yeah.
Right.
If you want to get their attention, yeah, it has
right.
Has to be a presentation to it.
Yeah, I'd say part of the problem is this Voyager thing that, we stopped doing math in our head, which means we couldn't form relationships between things properly using statistical analysis, probability, that sort of thing. When the calculator came, we just stopped doing math in our heads, and you lose a huge attribute of logical thinking and the relationships between things when you do. And then we went from computers to smartphones, and people just look stuff up. They don't think, they don't really do research. And now we have AI that answers questions for you as opposed to you examining the information and making an intelligent deduction. And we're trashing human intelligence. I would say that God must have realized this, that if we weren't launched to get this project done now and get a number of humans back into the garden, and then we're responsible for teaching them and equipping them and training them and leading them, if he prolonged this, it wouldn't be possible. You wouldn't have anybody that was, maybe you'd find some dogs or cats or something out there, some dolphins that could pay attention, but it certainly was going to be humans.
Well, yeah. This is the one that has the golden record on it and everything, right?
It is.
Voyager
it
1,
is. Yeah.
Out past Pluto. Yeah.
Yeah. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are very close to one another. They were launched within a month or so of each other. Both of them are outside of our solar system at this point. They're, I think they're, if not both, certainly Voyager 1 is, and Voyager 2 would be close. And they're in interstellar space. And I always think it's laughable because I read a post today that says, for the last 100 years, we have been broadcasting signals that aliens out there could find. Or we see posts and say, that there is a possibly habitable planet that is 20 light years away. Well, 20 light years is 200,000 years one way. Right. 200,000 years one way. This distances are phenomenal. They're just so far beyond anything we can imagine.
Saw something the other day where Voyager 1 is now 1 light day from the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's how far, and so it's only
it's nowhere.
20 light years. Yeah, it's nowhere.
Right. It's just nowhere.
Yeah.
So multiply the 37 years. It was actually launched in 77. So it's actually more than 50 years now, or 50 years, very close to 50 years, for 50 years for 1 light day. So now you multiply 50 years by 365 and a quarter days to be 1 light year. And even then, it's only a quarter of the way to the nearest star.
Yeah.
So
traveling at the speed of light.
Yes. Traveling at its present speed, it'd be if you multiplied 50 by 365, and that amount of time, it would be 1/4 of the way to the nearest star.
Yeah.
So that just tells you how, it will never get there.
Well, you don't know that I'm not going to go snag the gold record off of it when I get the first opportunity.
Well, you could. Yeah, we're gonna have that chance. I've looked at that record. I'm not very impressed with it, but anyway, nonetheless,
it's a knick-knack,
It is. So, there's just another picture of what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. And on X today, the story that I posted the most on was the BBC did a feature story that broke today on how well would the UK do, because Starmer is is announcing he wants to go to war with Russia. He wants to put boots on the ground and go to war with Russia. And so the question is, how well would the UK do, and how long would the UK last? And most people came to the conclusion that the Ukraine would last a matter of minutes, that the UK would last a matter of minutes, that Russia isn't going to engage in another conventional war. And therefore, it would be a hypersonic missile. The first one would strike London, and then there would be many, many more after that. And the UK is not going to have the will to fight with London in flames. And my response was that because of what the US and NATO did to force the Russians to defend themselves, Asher, please don't do that. To defend themselves from encroachment. Russia has learned how to fight a current war. And it's with interceptors, it's with missiles and very advanced missiles, and it's with drones. Artillery still has a value, but Russia has equipped itself. It still has the industry, still makes steel, still has the natural resources, still has the work ethic, and has turned its economy into making the things that matter in a war today. And the United States hasn't. The United States is so out of tune with reality that they lost the last two wars. The Taliban beat the United States, and then the Houthis. So the United States is lost. It's only a matter of time before the Iranians close the Strait of Hormuz because of U.S. belligerence. And there's nothing the United States can do about it. Mm-hmm. Just die. There's nothing. You can't take a carrier in there because these carriers cannot survive an onslaught of missiles, particularly the high-speed hypersonic missiles that vary their trajectory. It can't defend against those. Right. The carrier is a floating coffin. We want to deal with the fact that because we have become so belligerent in and around Russia, and now put our Navy so that we're poised to attack Venezuela, the Chinese have now put a cordon around Taiwan, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing. Mm-hmm. We can't get a carrier within 1,500 miles of the Chinese coast. Anything closer than 1,500 miles, the carrier wouldn't last a day. And so what do we have? We have we have F-35s, big whoop. That the F-35 is taken down with the air defense systems. This is not the time for manned aircraft. They're expensive and they're bulky, and now a sea of drones and mixed in with some missiles is how you fight. You don't project troops on the ground. We could no more deploy troops in the Ukraine or against Russia than the man on the moon. It's impossible. We can't. There's nothing we could do if Iran decides to close the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, we put ourselves into an impossible position. And then because of our belligerence with Venezuela, the Russians have done what we were so afraid of them doing back in the Cuban Missile Crisis. They now have their top-end missile launchers and missiles embedded in Venezuela, pointed at American cities. You want to screw with the Venezuela? Well, tell me which city you want to lose. So we are, American patriots are living in a fantasy land. They think that Russia's the aggressor in Ukraine, when exactly the opposite is true. It was a war that was caused by America deliberately. Goes all the way back to Bush, when he announced that Ukraine would be part of NATO, and dishonored the agreement that was made with Russia that said that if they give up East Berlin and East Germany to reunite Germany, that America would never move 1 inch closer to, that NATO would move 1 inch closer to Russia. And we've done exactly the opposite. And finally, with us running NATO operations in Ukraine and pulling off the coup that toppled the elected pro-Russian government to replace it with a pro-West government, and then began arming Ukraine to kill Russians with the express purpose of this war, to destroy Russia so that America and the UK could chop it up and claim its resources for themselves. We're clueless as to what we did to cause this war and so many others around the world, and why it's our responsibility that 2 million Ukrainians are dead. And we lost this war. And we lost the reserve currency of the dollar when we froze Russian assets in the United States. And when we kicked Russia off SWIFT, we said we can't be trusted. And every nation on earth realized the United States can't be trusted. And so nations began to buy gold to get off the dollar as a reserve currency. And they are joining BRICS, and they're trading in other currencies. The United States has lost the ability to print money, to weasel itself out of its spending spree. And we screwed ourselves. I mean, we've really destroyed ourselves in all of this. And rather than admitting that we lost and surrendering, we're continuing to be belligerent. I think that the next city to fall will be Odessa, and it'll leave Ukraine as a rump state. And you have Zelensky out there, who is a cocaine madman who has stole billions of dollars, saying we're not going to give up an inch of land. We already gave it up. The moment that new government was propped up, that replaced the pro-Russian government, the new government was told and did start bombing and harassing and killing the ethnic Russians in the Donbass region and eastern and southern Ukraine. Russia went in to protect their Russians and Russian speakers, ethnic Russians. And once they liberated them, they all voided to, we want to be part of Russia again. So those areas aren't part of the Ukraine. They are part of Russia now. And to say anything else is just to be stupid, and to be pounding your chest as Starmer saying, let's go. What I said in my post on this was really quite simple. That if Russia decided to respond to a conventional war against the UK, Russia would defeat the UK readily. It's trained. It has the weapons. It has the manufacturing capability. It has 20 times the size of the military. If it's a conventional war, UK is going to get trounced. And let's just play make-believe, and let's shed 100 years of decay of the UK and go back to when the UK was a colonial power. And let's then pretend that the UK can actually beat Russia in a conventional war. That's make-believe, of course, but let's pretend. What is Russia going to do? Roll over, play dead? No. If we shed 100 years of English decay, and we make them back to the belligerent bullies they were during their colonial period, and they were fighting, and you sent them against Russia, and let's just pretend, play make believe that in a conventional war, the UK takes it to Russia and wins a conventional war against Russia. What's Russia going to do? Roll over, play dead? Scratch my belly?
It's nukes.
Of course.
No.
So there is no winning. It's lose-lose whichever way you go. That's why this whole thing has been so stupid from the beginning. God, just shut up. Surrender, shut up, apologize, give them their money back. They just took $100 billion of Russian assets, of sovereign Russian funds. The UK did, and the EU did, and it's going to spend it in Ukraine. It's an act of war. The consequence to Europe is going to be devastating. It should be.
Mm-hmm.
Where's my reparations? Good God, we're
40
stupid.
40 acres and a mule.
Checks in the mail.
Yep, 40 acres and a mule. And where did you come up with that 40 acres and a mule? Kevin?
Where'd
you come up with that?
What was the plan after of rebuilding Atlanta and everything? What was the Marshall Plan was for... but it was the plan that happened after the Civil War, whatever.
Yeah, the plan that happened after Civil War had reparations. It was 40 acres and a mule. Absolutely. reparations have already been paid. And then not only have reparations been paid, the 40 acres and a mule, but beyond all of that, when LBJ decided he wanted to have the great plan, the Great Society, he started a process that transferred trillions from those who were productive to those who were not productive. Entitlements and the like, affirmative action has already paid reparations 1,000-fold. But beyond all of that, it wouldn't do any good, because if you transferred all of the wealth of productive people and gave it to somebody who, well, can't even do their hair in a way that they could show up for work and be valued for anything that could make a contribution. Excuse me, but if your outward appearance isn't such that you're credible, then there's something really wrong here. And if you're begging for reparations as opposed to trying to build something to make your life better, there's something really wrong here. You give that kind of money to a person who is a dependent, they'll squander it. Drugs, alcohol, they'll lose it all. Wouldn't do them a bit of good. In fact, it would probably kill them faster.
Yeah.
But
yes.
you go back, it's even worse than that. The slave trade began because Africans in Western Africa were killing other Africans, and they did the same thing that civilizations around the globe did. They attacked their neighbor, and they enslaved a percentage of them. They killed the most vicious of the men, and they took the women and children and as slaves, and they used the slaves to do the work in their country. So slavery was a part of the caste system of every civilization around the world, including the New World. And in Africa, it wasn't as sophisticated as it was elsewhere. And so Africans were warring with one another, and they took slaves like everybody else. And they reached a point where, because they weren't building empires, they were tribal lands, they couldn't use any more slaves. And guess what they did then? They just killed everybody. So the only way you became a slave is if you lost a war and they decided that they could use more slaves rather than just kill you. So 100% of those who were enslaved by other Africans in Africa. And the alternative for them was to be dead. So being a slave, horrible thing, terrible practice, I think is repugnant. But the alternative for the person enslaved in Africa was to be dead. And the slaves in Africa were not sold to the Americans. They were sold to Muslims. All of them were sold to Muslims. The Muslims were the racketeers of the slave trade. They then sold the slaves to English and Dutch and Spanish and French shipping companies. And they're the ones who shipped them to South and Central America and the Caribbean. And they were processed from that point on. So my view, it's a horrible system, but you need to know why it came, why it was there, why being a slave was actually better than being dead. And it wasn't death being perpetrated by Europeans, but by other Africans. And that the middleman that greased the wheels of slavery were Muslims. So if you want reparations, I'd go and talk to the Muslims. That'd be a good thing to do. But the fact of the matter is, you now, many, many generations distanced, you have absolutely no gripe whatsoever. So put down your stupid sign. Go away.
Right.
Oh, Black Lives Matter, bro. We're two for two.
Right.
When Black Lives Matter was occurring, my initial response was to say, you're complete hypocrites. Of course, Black Lives Matter. White lives matter. Red lives matter. Green lives matter. Yellow lives matter. Lives matter. They don't seem to matter to a lot of people. I mean, if you're a Muslim, your life doesn't matter much, but life should matter. But the problem I had with Black Lives Matter was this thing here. You got these three fingers pointing right back at you and this finger pointing out. I had done previously, and I did again, a research into the Department of Justice crime statistics. And when you do so, what you find is that 93% of the time that a black man is killed, it's not by a white person, by another black person. So if Black Lives Matter, you're going to be pointing your finger at yourself and say, what is wrong with our culture that 93% of the time that a black young man loses his life, it's taken by another black young man? What's wrong with our culture? Don't be pointing the finger and blaming other cultures. The second is that if there is an interracial crime where the perpetrator is or the victim is white or black, then 80% of the time in interracial crime, it's the black killing the white, not the white killing the black. Mm-hmm. So the facts do not support your movement. Not at all, not even remotely. The facts all are opposed to your movement. So my response was, why in the world are people rallying around this when it is based on a lie and it's covering over a profoundly important realization that there's something wrong in the black culture here in not only America, but in many places around the world where murder is a go-to option rather than words. Why is the community so destructive to itself? And there's lots of reasons for that. I mean, I don't want to do a whole show on the reasons for it. I've done it in the past. Right. There are reasons for it. And a lot of it is damn poor parenting. Mostly, well, both mothers and fathers. The women are often abused in the black culture. Here I live on an island with 85% black, and a huge percentage of the women are beaten. And they as victims beat their children. And so their children beat their children. And most of them don't know where their fathers are. The father is a sperm donor that goes in and out of everyone's life. They don't even know who they are, and they don't raise their kids. That's not true with everybody. There's some wonderful mothers and fathers here, and I love living on this island. I met marvelous, marvelous people. But the fact is that there's a high percentage of non-participatory fathers and abusive mothers, way too high a percentage. And that is causing a problem. And part of the problem is that proper role modeling doesn't exist. There's the person holding the sign, I'm entitled. And not somebody getting up before the sun rises, getting themselves dressed and properly groomed and prepared to go to work, showing up at work, making a contribution at work, working, bringing home a paycheck. No, they want to sit around and do drugs or be entitled. And you never get out of this rut under that basis. So proper parenting is just not modeled. I hired so many young black kids on this island when I was remodeling my home, and none of them could talk about a positive parental role model in their lives, and had just the opposite. And, I tried to mentor them and tried to help them and tried to teach them a trade. And it blew up famously in my face. I was robbed, right, for having opened my home and heart to these kids. So there's a real problem in the black culture. Now, the other problem here that I have is that in this particular post, the Black Lives Matter co-founder, who is, by the way, a Marxist and has robbed Black Lives Matter charities of millions of dollars. She was condemning people who are a Taylor Swift, and I'm not a Taylor Swift fan, but anybody that says a Taylor Swift fan, you're slightly racist if you're a Taylor Swift fan. And yet she is now recorded teaching students how to be anti-Semites and getting around any laws or rules that trying to limit anti-Semitism, because these little witches here are anti-Semites. and anti-Semitism and Muslim genocide against Jews has been hugely interwoven into this whole Black Lives Matter fiasco.
Oh, she's got the Khalifa on there. Yeah.
So, she does. Yes, she does. They're reprehensible. I just find the whole thing absolutely disgusting. There were sporting events. The NBA went all Black Lives Matter and just stopped watching it. Said, no, I'm never going to watch another game. The NFL went to it, and I stopped watching NFL games. Now,
I haven't been
being
back.
the opposite of a
being the opposite of a
racist. Now, I may start watching NFL games again because there's a kid that I like, and he is a kid that's been dumped on. I like his father. I like him, and Shredder Sanders is the kid, and he's the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. He was terribly treated in the draft and up to this point, but the kid's got talent, and the kid's an interesting kid to watch play, and I love his dad, Deion Sanders. And so
prime time,
I think I'm going to become a Cleveland Browns fan just because I know, but because I like this kid. I think he's a great story. That's but anyway, we digress. All right, what do we have next, sir? Oh, goodness gracious. So here's the... I'm very stupid. I want you to see what I got my lipstick on now. Yeah, I put my makeup on this morning, so I can't be as stupid as you think I am. Oh, there is not a Jewish-Muslim conflict. No. We love the Jews. They're our brothers in faith. Oh, my God. How in the hell can people be this deranged? I mean, if it wasn't for plundering, raping, enslaving, and murdering Jews, there would be no Islam. Islam is literally based upon plundering, enslaving, raping, and murdering Jews. Without Jews to rob, there would be no Quran. No one would ever have heard of Muhammad if he hadn't been able to abuse the Jews of Yathrib and then of Kabar. So this notion that we're brothers and sisters and faith and we're not in conflict with each other, Islam has declared genocide on mankind and primarily on Jews, where there's extra bonus points with Allah if you kill a Jew. To be that absolutely stupid just is so irritating. That the world is that ignorant of Islam. God, there's no excuse. Read the 5 volumes of Goddamn Religion. They're free at yadayah.com. Stop being like this woman, a nincompoop.
Yeah, the old Rodney King quote, why can't we all just get along? Not until you put down your politics and your religion. Then, it's not going to happen. Then we have a chance.
Yeah, then we have a chance. We can at least have a normalized discussion when you put down your politics and your religion. Yeah, this is the great hypocrisy of the world. 1944, the Nazis fired 11,000 rockets into England, and when Churchill retaliated, he was called a war hero. By 2024, and they have to say Hamas, it's not Hamas, it's Muslims, had fired over 32,000 rockets into Israel. And when Netanyahu retaliated, he was called a war criminal. Hypocrisy, isn't it? We're claiming that, and listen, I'm opposed to Israel having destroyed Gaza. I think they made a bad situation worse. I'm not saying that the Muslims in Gaza didn't deserve it. I'm just saying that it wasn't good for Israel. I don't really care about the Muslims in Gaza. That might sound terrible, but I'm the foremost expert on the planet on Islam, and I know that Islam cannot be fixed. And I know that when those abductees were brought back into Gaza, the Jewish abductees, to be tortured and raped, that the Gazans all applauded, and there wasn't a single Gazan, not a single one, that helped them. So they have given up all rights to be cared about. But the very fact is that Israel going in to destroy Gaza was harmful to Israel's reputation in the world. So that part bothers me. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at what America did, and prosecuting the last World War, we'll probably not get to it today. We didn't get to it to our last one, but I had a picture of some guys standing around the little boy before it was dropped on Hiroshima. And the United States and Dresden, and then in Japan and Tokyo and other cities, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, we killed 50 to 100,000 civilians a night, deliberately.
One night,
when we bombed Hiroshima, we estimated that maybe there could have been off-duty 6,000 Japanese soldiers, maybe. And they would have been off duty at the time. And the city of 300,000 people. We killed 100,000 people in a second. 100,000 people. And at least 93,000 of them were civilians. And we did it deliberately. And then we did it again in Nagasaki. And we were doing it when we were firebombing Tokyo night after night. And we did it throughout Germany. We fought the war against the Germans through terror, through firebombing civilians. And we want to complain that after the Gazan Muslims rape and plunder and abduct and murder Jews, and the Jews conduct the most pro-civilian return of fire in human military history, that the Jews are bad and we're good? You're out of your mind? You just look at the idiocy of the Second World War in the Pacific. The Japanese, I don't think it's a surprise attack at all, but Pearl Harbor, to have Pearl Harbor attacked the way it was, with the aircraft carriers which had value all out at sea, and the battleships which had no value whatsoever, all lined up like sitting ducks, and all of the senior officers out playing golf and everybody else asleep. And just after we had told the Japanese we're cutting them off on oil and on steel, and we knew what the consequences of that's going to be. It's going to be war. And then we have a radar operations, and they just ignore what's happening. I don't think that Pearl Harbor was accidental. I don't think it's accidental at all. And every other war that we've been into, we lied about the cause of the war: the sinking of the Lusitania, the sinking of the Maine, the Gulf of Tonkin. They're all lies. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and Al Qaeda being in Iraq, they're all lies. It's what we do. That Afghan was somehow responsible for 9/11. Bull. We lie. So I think we lied about this too. I think we set up 3,000 Americans to die. But think of what happened after that. We sacrificed 100,000 dead and 300,000 seriously wounded in the Pacific, specifically to avenge the attack on Pearl Harbor. Nobody in their right mind sacrifices 100,000 young men and women to avenge the deaths of 3,000. That's not victory. That's stupidity. That's immorality. And somebody said, "Oh, you can't have done nothing." Good God, when your choice is you're going to sacrifice 33 times more people than were killed in an attack you should never have allowed to have happened, versus doing nothing, and that's the only option you think that exists? God, there were so many better options. Like, for example, telling the Russians, you want to continue to receive American wheat shipments and ball bearing shipments and tank shipments and weapon shipments to beat the Germans? We want Vladivostok. And all we do is we move all of our long bomber squadrons to the Aleutian Islands. And you fly them from there. They refuel in Vladivostok. They bomb the living crap out of Japan, and it's over.
Right.
You don't do this island hop. You don't lose 100,000 men. In fact, it was close enough. You could even have had fighter coverage for them. They wouldn't be like they were when we, lost so many B-24 crews over occupied Europe. So yeah, there were lots of other options in the Pacific theater that we could have pursued, but we didn't. And we actually ended up partnering with Mao Zedong and against Chiang Kai-shek, which caused the mess that followed there. And then ultimately we capitulated to Stalin, who was worse than Hitler. And so we just made a mess of the world. But this whole experience in Gaza is just so deplorable. How the world has just blind eye to what they have done. The hypocrisy is just rife.
Yeah, isn't it lucky for the Earth that every major war that's ever been committed on the Earth has been won by the good guys? I mean, we've been really, really lucky.
Yeah, the good guys won them all. That's like the first 100 years of Islam. They killed 200 million people. The first Muslims in the first 100 years of Islam killed 200 million people. Probably raped and plundered an additional 200 million. The 200 million they killed was 1/3 of the population of the planet at the time. Aren't we so lucky that the good guys won?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you want to know why Islam exists from Africa all the way to Pakistan, it's because in the first 100 years of Islam, it was the most deadly plague humanity had ever conceived.
Yeah, submit or die. Mm-hmm.
But then, they weren't alone. Look at how ruthless the Romans were, how ruthless the Spartans were, how ruthless the Carthaginians were, how ruthless the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas were. They were all, human civilization is the story of horror. We are slavers, we're mass murderers, we're plunderers. We're individual men and women can be good or bad. We tend to be bad, but we can be good or bad. Collectively, we're always bad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's an incredibly talented individual, a hard worker and a fighter, and she's going to be a very formidable candidate, says the Muslim that is so out of touch with reality that he is also a Marxist. Oh my God. Have you ever heard this woman speak?
Which voice? She's got multiple voices.
She's got multiple voices, like she's possessed or schizophrenic.
Because she's actually very well educated in St. Louis.
Yeah.
The whole ghetto thing, that's a fraud. That's not how she actually speaks. I've listened to AOC. I've listened to her. I've listened to the worst of these progressive Bernie Sanders, and everything that comes out of their mouth is just total nonsense. I mean, listen, I'm not political. You couldn't be more opposed to MAGA and Trump than I am, but the other side, it's pathetic. It's as if they never witnessed anything in their lives. They've never had a job. They've never accomplished anything in their lives. They have no value, no concept of the value of enterprise, and they are complete ignoramuses when it comes to economics, and therefore they have the politics of, well, rob the productive, give to the unproductive, and everything will be just hunky dory. No, you'll have nothing.
Yeah.
You'll have a guarantee that everyone is equally enslaved and impoverished is what you're going to have. These people think that you're in politics to work. No, look at Omar in Minnesota. She came in by illegally marrying her brother so she could come into the country. She's in a district that's got 20 some odd thousand Somalis that we now know have stolen hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud. They are responsible for electing her. She's never had a job in her life, and she's worth now something like $20 million. God, we have a broke system.
None of these civil servants ever leave office broke.
Poor.
Never even leave office even a little bit worse off than they entered it.
Yeah, look at Bill Clinton. He was totally impoverished and bankrupt. Becomes president. He's over a $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar trust fund. You look at George W. Bush. His last enterprise was Abrusco Oil, a complete and utter failure. He's bailed out by the Saudi funds. He leaves office and he is a billionaire. You look at Obama. Never had a job in his life. And he lives in multiple mansions. They're all the same. You look at Trump. He came in. He was essentially bankrupt and going to prison. And now billions and billions and billions and billions. It's all a fraud that's being perpetrated on the American people, and they go gleefully along with their political rhetoric. So it is
the
exceedingly
lesser of
sad.
two evils. What's the lesser of two evils when one side is satanic? So we have starvation on one side and Hasatan on the other side. So
yeah, I'm glad at this point we're not political, because can you imagine having to choose between MAGA and Marxists?
No, I don't leave my island already. So
yes, there we go. And I'm actually on an island. This is just funny that they're pulling. they're pulling the landlines. Yeah, back in the day, that was the only way that you could have a telephone. I was one of the first in Los Angeles to have a cellular phone, literally one of the very, very first. And it was actually a full-on phone that was put in my car. It had the handset that you'd pull up with the little curly wire that would go to the base of the phone, just like this little guy here has. And it has a place that you could put it on its cradle. And it had I think they had just come out with the buttons as opposed to the rotary phone at that point. And I remember the first time that I used it to call one of my appointments. I was running a few minutes late, and I wanted to let them know that I was there, that I had picked up something that they wanted me to grab on the way. And so I called, and the assistant of the buyer answered the phone. And I said, I'm en route. I'm only about 5 minutes out at this point, but I'll be a few minutes late because I picked up this sample that you wanted. And they said, where are you calling from? I said, I'm calling from my car. Well, how did you get a telephone line that long?
Right.
Well, they're no longer going to have telephone lines, so I guess they can't be telephone poles anymore. I don't know what we're going to call those unsightly things, but I remember the last two houses that I remodeled. They had wires everywhere for telephony, and the first thing we do, what are you going to do with them? I said, well, I'd leave them in the wall because they're really good for pulling. So if you want to pull coax or some other kind of cable, you can use them as a pull wire. But they don't have any other value. And they're also filled with coax too. Remember coax? Yeah, those are two bygone eras. But the world has changed a lot. And it's only a matter of time between now and the time the next device goes out. Remember, people used to have radios. You were familiar with that? A radio, yeah. Well, they had record players.
Oh, sure.
Can you imagine being the top manufacturer of a radio or a record player? What are you going to do with it? Or this kind of telephone? Yeah, a telephone. Things are going out of style very quickly. And so that phone is part of them. I'm actually thinking that electric vehicles may not be long for this world. They may not. We may not be around long enough for them to run their cycle, but they really are currently, as they're currently designed, they're really a lousy design. They don't have enough range. They are way too difficult to recharge, and the batteries are toxic to the environment. They're prohibitively expensive compared to regular gas internal combustion cars.
There's nothing wrong with the advances that have come out in electric motor technology. That's fantastic. Now they just need a better way to generate that electricity. I mean, hydrogen, I think, is what will be the next thing to replace. I mean, it just makes sense.
Well, so far there's only been one company, I think it was Toyota, that tried a hydrogen car, and right now they're worthless. So if you bought one, they were expensive and they're worthless. So that did not prevail. Hydrogen is pretty explosive stuff. So I don't know if we're going to ever see a hydrogen-powered vehicle, and the batteries are just not where they need to be yet for electric vehicles. And then we have the generation problem. Atomic energy would have worked really well, particularly now that we have the plants that can actually run on the daughter product, so that we can use the waste more effectively and we generate energy more safely. But the Liberals had a conniption fit with generating atomic energy, and we just didn't build enough plants, and therefore that source of energy is not available to us. And hydroelectric plants were a wonderful economic source, but the Liberals had a fit over that too, and so we're tearing them down rather than building them. We actually figured out a way to burn coal in a way that had very little side effects, and but we've that's not fashionable, so we pulled away from that. And most of the world floats on enormous amounts of natural gas, and it's amazing that we don't use it because it burns very cleanly, very efficiently. It's not a very good thing to put in a car because it's too explosive, but nonetheless, it could generate power very efficiently. But like America, we won't build the pipelines to distribute it if you don't have the pipelines to distribute it. And America doesn't have a fleet of natural liquefied natural gas transporters, so we can't transport it worth a darn. We're just not in a position we can even sell our own natural gas. So we're just stupid in all of this, and so we plumb the world for oil and attack nations that have oil like Russia and Venezuela, and try to control the world through the petrodollar, and it's not working out real well for us. So energy policy is not about as useful now as that telephone. Well, this is this post here was that these are all the different types of humanoid beings over time. The Neanderthal over there, and finally this says, but only Homo sapiens remain. And I said, no, we have Homo stupidus that has proliferated. So long as Homo stupidus exists, that is the prevailing form of humanity. I have watched here a number of shows recently on Neanderthals, and what we've actually found is that the oldest Neanderthal gene is found, I think it's Mount Harmon in Israel, and it goes back 140,000 years. And they were using tools. They were living in communities. You saw people with tragic injuries, broken bones and holes and ribs and skulls, and yet those healing, and they continuing to survive, which means they were in communities that took care of the sick and the wounded. And so, I'm not sure we progressed very far in all of this time. One of the most interesting things is the research that has been done on the Taurid meteor storm. Have you heard much about that?
I have it coming back around in 2034 or 30 around there, something like that. 13,000.
32. Yeah. There appear to have been around the world, in the Amazon, we know in Turkey, but other places in the world, there appear to have been a number of fairly advanced communities, civilizations, kingdoms, going back about 12,800 BCE that were all wiped out at the same time. And what it appears is that the Earth went through the tail of this massive meteor, and it's called the Taurid meteor. And there were so many fragments of that meteor that the Earth went through that it caused this huge amount of upwelling of dust and debris and tsunamis and all that sort of thing, that it just took down human civilization. We had to reboot after that, and we're going right back through it in 2032, 1 year before Yahweh and Dode return. So the Earth may be in for a really
horrible experience.
Oh, with that and Apophis, yeah, just
I don't know if Apophis is going to hit us or not. You know, Apophis is a Revelation thing. Friday, April 13th, I think, in 2029 is when it's supposed to come about a third of the way between here and the moon. And of course, it could be nudged somewhere along the way. So we'll see if that causes a problem. At this point, I know that Revelation's absolute rubbish. So I wouldn't bet on it. But I do know that there is still a lot of concern in NASA and the like of how close this is coming and what damage it might do to us. But we'll see. This woman is really an interesting discussion. She wanted to conduct an interview. She is a true libertard. They say that you should be able to sell a blonde woman's brain for a lot because it's completely unused. If you ever wanted to have brain replacement surgery, she epitomizes this. She was talking about how bad Jews are and how good Muslims are by comparison, and so he said, that dress that you're wearing there, it's a cocktail dress. Why don't you tell me which of the following cities? I want to give you the best of the Muslim cities around the world. You tell me which of these cities you could wear that dress and live through the experience. And he, listed Beirut and he said, well, we try even Gaza and Karachi, Pakistan. And he went through the list and said, so where could you wear? He said, well, it's only because of what the U.S. has done to hold these people down and to oppress them. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so. And he says, so you're going to blame the West for Islam? That you don't think that the dress code that you would be violating and their response to you, where they would stone you to death and whip you to death in those cities, has anything to do with Islam? It strictly has to do with the West impoverishing these people. And she stuck to her guns, said, "Yep, that's what I'm going with." And so it's you just wonder why it's as few as 1 in a million people that actually understand this religion of Islam, and why it's only maybe 1 in 1,000 of those that are willing to speak out against it and hold people accountable. He is one of my heroes. That is the most intellectually gifted man, I think, in the media by a long shot. He is sarcastic as they all come. There's a man I would hope I think he happens to be an atheist, but there's hope for him. He's brilliant.
Right.
Yeah. Bill Maher.
Oh
yeah, this is the oh my, when you have Piers Morgan and Nick Fuentes and one is calling the other an anti-Semite, you just where do you go with this? I mean, Nick Fuentes, I had thought was the lowest form of scum on the planet. That's why I was so disgusted when Trump brought him for dinner at Mar-a-Lago. He is the guy that wants to blame Jews for everything. And you just don't get to be a more reprehensible anti-Semite than Nick Fuentes. He's also the guy that created the cult that Charlie Kirk's murderer. He was into Nick Fuentes' cult. And so you just don't get worse. But Piers Morgan, oh my God. I mean, he is so anti-Israel and so anti-Jew, it just makes your skin crawl. And what I realize is that while this is the lesser and greater anti-Semite talking to each other, the fact of the matter is now they don't even hold a coin. Nick Fuentes is saying, what in the hell happened to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson? Because they're so far further down this chain of we hate Jews than they have ever been. And so now it's really hard to find who is the greater anti-Semite in the world today, because Nick Fuentes set the standard until Tucker Carlson got catarrhed and demon possessed, and Candace Owens, who knows what happened to her? But oh my God, these people! We are living in a time where the most popular influencers are out of their ever-loving minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for entertainment,
for entertainment. People, people follow them. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens have millions that follow them, and they're reprehensible. They're just disgusting. Oh my! There's marches now, parades going on in Damascus of both military and of jihadists, and what they're shouting is "Death to Jews! We're going to Israel. The blood of the Jews will run. We're going to kill the Jews." And so here, the United States creates ISIS through the Awakening program. They destroy what was left of Mosul and northern Iraq. And then they go into Syria. They destroy Syria. We aided and abetted them through our CIA because we wanted Assad gone because he was buying Russian weapons, and we wanted Syria to buy US weapons. So we created the Islamic State. The Islamic State then takes over Syria. And then we join arms with and invite him into the White House and tell him how handsome he is and what a great fighter he is and how wonderful a person. And they're marching in the streets now, parading to go and destroy Israel.
Yeah.
Boy, when you are responsible as a nation for bringing the Islamic State into fruition with what they have done, and then you're funding them and now equipping them with weapons, you're as disgusting as they are. So, take that MAGA and put that in your pipe and choke on it.
Yeah, the Druzi are just the stepping stone between Israel and Syria at this point. I mean, they live in Syria, but they're going to walk straight through them.
They will walk straight through them. Oh, this is the Trinity. You got the Jesus, you got Satan, and you got the pooper. Of course, this is the Babylonian Beast, so it's a thing that they would say that that the Pope was urging that Jesus and Satan just to put aside their differences and in the name of peace. But normally I would just say that Jesus with his son God dis there and Satan are one and the same. But actually, this is three of a kind. These fellows are three in a kind. This is the Pope, the myth of Jesus, and Satan, all the same entity. You want to know who the devil is? There they are. Now, Jesus isn't real, but he's played for all he's worth, and Satan happens to be real, but he is the Lord of religion. And boy, I tell you what, the Catholics, the last two popes have got to have been the worst possible picks. They're both communists. They're both dunderheads. You just shake your head and say, how in the world could there be a billion people in the world that think that Looney Tune there is a man of God? And how in the world could there be 2.5 billion people that think God is a man and that men can kill God?
Yeah. And that it's okay to eat him.
To eat him, oh yeah, eat him and drink his blood. Eat him and drink his blood. Yeah. Oh well, we'll leave
one time. I think it was on your show one time. I think it was Yoel that was talking about his sister was saying, "Mommy, why are they putting Jesus in the microwave?" That just cracks me up every time.
Yeah, I know.
I was thinking of that same line. Yeah, it's and you know, if you look at Ezekiel, that's what he's going to have, the feast of the beast, where cannibalism will be the order of the day. It's going to be my body that he chooses to eat my blood he wanted to drink, but he's going right back to cannibalism and drinking blood. And I was really clear about that drinking blood thing. Don't do
Pour it out on the ground.
Pour it out, baby. Pour it out, baby. You can eat whatever you want, but you know, eating a human, it says you can't even touch a dead human body, so you can't eat the human if you can't touch the dead human body. So he's pretty much no netse on the cannibalism thing, but on the blood thing, absolutely not. Yes, Leah.
I read that part. Actually, what it says is that the bashar is in the blood.
Well, God's point is that our bodies are meaningless to us, and so you can eat whatever you want. That's what it says in Devarim 12, and that our souls are valuable, but a soul is redeemed with blood. So don't drink the blood. That blood needs to be shed. It'll be poured out on the earth. It already has been once with Dode. It will be again with the Adam of Perah. And that this is a marvelous little graphic. We'll end the program with this. We've gone almost 2 hours, an hour and 45 minutes for our vlog on the blog. I could do this forever. This is the easiest, most freeing experience to talk about items in the news. But this is not an item in the news unless you're watching our programs. The lesser luminary that reflects the greater luminary is light. And the tree of life sitting there on top of these books representing Yada Yahweh and the books, that providing enlightenment for those who wish to avail themselves of it. This is the opportunity. It's there at yadayah.com. We're not selling anybody anything. Everything is free. We don't even track you. We don't ask you for anything. And every book is available in its entirety for you to read, as well as an index of all of these blogs and the various places that we live stream these programs, the first ever vlog on a vlog. And I was delighted to see Wookie do his introduction. We'll tell him he needs to speak a little bit quieter on the next one, but
we'll work on that.
We'll work on that. And maybe he could be a little more chatty. He's only there for like 4 or 5 seconds. Wookie, I think, needs to have a little bit longer introduction, but I love the approach for the vlog on the vlog. So thank you for doing it. I hope I haven't completely worn off your ear there, Kevin.
Not at all. We can keep going. Okay. Yeah, I had plenty of time.
Yeah, and it's for you actually got to come inside, right? It's only like 15 degrees there.
Oh yeah. Well, it will be this weekend. I think. Yeah, it's very windy right now, and it's like 33 out right now. But this weekend's a high of 15. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Ooh, ouch. Well, I won't tell you what the temperature is here because that would make you unhappy.
Not at all. It's a big bad world out there. So
it is.
It's some places it's really nice all the time, and some places that other people don't want to be. So it's a good place.
I left the places where the weather was crappy, and
right.
I'm delighted to be at a place where it's nice. And unfortunately, we don't get to enjoy it. We don't get much outdoor time anymore. But at least we can look out there and say, "Hey, that looks nice out there."
It looks right.
We can go back and forth between the various studios, can't we, Rich? And shorts and not suffer much. But God, the beach is here. It's a minute away by foot from here, and we haven't been to it in months.
Yeah, we
don't get out much because of that stack of books there and the Yada Yah blog. And hey, we do have some good news though. Joe, who has been working on getting all the books republished in this new look with the proper graphics. Like this one's an entirely new edition, but is very close to getting everything now republished at Amazon, and has launched the new site, which I love. But he's going to arrive here in a little over a week and stay for a couple of weeks, and we'll have some high quality time to we'll be focusing on improving and augmenting the website during that time. So it's this will be his second visit here, and we're delighted to have him. He's been my good friend for, oh my goodness, decades. that we've been through the thick and thin of it for decades. So happy to have that occur. Wookie is now signing off over there in the Leia chair, and Leia is sitting next to Rich, and it's time to say thank you. It was fun to do the vlog on a vlog. Good day.